Interviews. We taped every interview. Human memory is very finite. Cannot trust your memory. You have to go back to the written transcript. And we actually sat down and then pored over all these transcripts and said, what is the pattern that emerges? I would tell you that this probably was the most creative part of our research. There's a lot of hard work, then comes the creative leap of faith where you say, this is the pattern that we see. Even as I talk about the pattern that we saw, we are well aware that this is a changing pattern. If we come back and do the same research 10 years from now, the pattern will be somewhat different. Nevertheless, as we looked at this composite picture that was emerging, these four themes stood out to us, and they are that Indian firms are distinctive in part because, number one, there is holistic engagement with employees. Number two is the domain of improvisation and adaptability. Number three, these firms have creative value propositions. And number four, there is broad mission and purpose of these organizations. Let me go through in turn and say just a little bit more about each one. And I'm going to come back to the stories I wanted to tell in a moment. Maybe not. Could we, okay, will this back up? Back up one slide, please. Thank you. Let me talk about it here. Holistic engagement with employees refers to the fact that the nature of the employment relationship as Indian business leaders think about them is different than what people think about in America, let us say. In the United States, the employment relationship is thought of primarily as an instrumental exchange. It's as if the employee and the organization are having the following conversation. What is it that you can do for me? What is it that I in turn can do for you? This is an exchange transaction. Not only that, not much more is owed beyond this exchange transaction. In fact, the boundary of the employment relationship, such that what is within the boundary of the employment relationship belongs to the firm, and what is outside the boundary of the employment relationship is your private life, your family life. That boundary is very sharply drawn in America. So much so that you really hesitate quite a lot before calling people from your workplace on the weekend. Some might actually get offended. In contrast, in India, this boundary is very fuzzy, and it's drawn in a way where, in fact, much more of the life and the self of the employee is included in the employment relationship. This has both pluses and minuses, but it's a fact of many Indian organizations. This means, you might ask us, so what does it lead to? So what is the outcome? So why is it important? It can have profound effects. Let me give you an example of a conversation I was having with Keshav Mahindra earlier this year in January. We were having a lovely extended lunch at his office, and he started to talk about how in 2007, 2008, there was a downturn in the automobile market. Of course, a downturn in India simply means it's not growing at 20%, it's growing at 8 or 10%. In the US, we would kill to have a particular sector grow at 8 to 10%, but that's another story. And he said, we were going to have to shut down our plant, and the question that I was really thinking about was, how can I lay off these workers? We're going to shut down our plant, but I really cannot lay off these workers. These are family members. Some of them have been with us for 25, 30 years. They are part of our family. And for every person that I lay off, he says, I know that there are 5 other people in his home who are depending on him. I just couldn't do it. So I said, Keshav, what did you do? He says, well, we had to shut down the plant because we can't carry excess inventory and incur losses because of that. We shut down the plant and we said to the workers, don't come to the plant. We don't have work to do right now, no cars to manufacture. However, what we would like you to do, we have gardens at the plant, at other offices of the company. We would like you to report for duty at the garden. And we want you to work in the garden. And then he says, with a very happy smile, and we have very loyal workers who are very motivated, and we have the best looking gardens of any company in India. Now, I mentioned this simply because a US CEO, it is quite possible, if he or she were to do this, would actually get sued by his shareholders for dereliction of duty. Very different way of thinking. On improvisation and adaptability, this is a really unique Indian quality. There is something about the environment in which Indian leaders have grown up. And this, of course, many of them are of an age that they were growing up in the 70s and in the 80s, some even in the 1960s. There is something about the unfavorable quality of the Indian context, whether it is infrastructure, mundane details like roads and electricity and telephones. I mean, many of you are not old enough to remember what the telecom sector really was like in India before the opening up of the telecom sector in 1995. In the early 90s, as I remember, the entire country had something like a couple of million phone numbers. And of course, today we are coming up on 600 million. And already in numbers are the second largest market in the world. But something about the Indian context has prepared the leaders in such a way that in fact they have this quality of enormous flexibility, enormous resilience, great capacity to deal with uncertainty, all kinds of obstacles, all kinds of shocks. They know how to improvise. They come up with creative, out-of-the-box solutions. Now, mind you, it's worth mentioning here, it's not as if I am becoming an apologist for the tough conditions under which these executives grew up. Quite the contrary. It is the case that having survived this very tough selection environment, the ones that succeeded, that were left standing at the end, had to have these qualities or they would never have survived. However, there was probably a huge cost paid by the system overall in that many capable people, many capable firms, what might have gone on to become multi-billion-dollar global enterprises, never made it. They got killed early on, right? They are no longer here to tell us their story. Let's not forget that. There was a huge cost. Nevertheless, after the fact, the survivors have this great quality. And I would suggest to you that India's success on the global stage in the world of business, in part, is coming from this quality. The cliche is you sort of take an Indian out of India and you put him in America or any country in the world and they just blossom. Right? Give them any kind of positive, supportive environment, they just thrive. Something to do with this quality. It's not just in IT or software services, not just in BPO, it's in healthcare. If you haven't studied it already, go study Arvind Eye Hospital. Absolutely remarkable story. And just to give you, this is worth telling. If you know, let me make a concrete recommendation. Go to a website called www.TED. You know what TED is? TED? Go to the TED website and do a search under Arvind Eye Hospital and you will come up with a 20-minute video and watch that video. Half of you will have tears in your eyes by the time you're done watching it. But that's not the point, not to make you cry. That's not the point. The point is, so this is one hospital with 3 locations all around here actually, right? And some in there are 2 locations somewhere in the neighborhood nearby. In 3 locations, they said over a 5-year period, let's actually benchmark against some outside comparison. So they benchmark against the National Health Service in the UK.